Boom, 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 beat.
Alrighty, Juanitosville, I am wearing all my jewelry. I'm as obnoxious as that chubby kid on the school bus with the crooked haircut. Super obnoxious, friends. But we're going to make it happen. We go hard like cold lard. We're going to talk about sheet today, friends. Keeping it groovy like a drive-in movie right here. We're starting off with 24 gauge. I love to use 24 gauge for bezels, guys. For smaller bezels specifically. Up to probably about an inch maybe in diameter bezel. 24 gauge is good for this clasp, this little slide mechanism that you had to bend it. It has to have an acute bend. And if you need to really bend metal, 24 gauge is great because it's pretty thin. 24 gauge is 1/2 of a millimeter, roughly. I have this piece right here, guys, that I did with 24 gauge as the back plate. And if you really look closely, you can see that it's warped a little bit. See how it's kind of bent a little bit? That wouldn't have happened if I would have used 20 gauge. But on this one, I used 24 gauge, man, because I wanted for it to be a little lighter. This right here, as it sits, is 49 grams. Wild Horse Magnesite, also known as Wild Horse Jasper. Got this from Noble Art Dimensions. But yeah, so this is kind of an experiment. I have a video. You can watch how I made this video right here. This is pretty much an experiment, but pretty cool. I think so. But yeah, I learned that 20 gauge would not have made those little warp spots. 24 gauge also, guys, is really good for feathers. This is here an example of some feathers that I made. Some small ones. And then all the way up to these really big ones. Guys, you can use 24 gauge for this too. It's work hardened because of the texturing of the feathers. If you want to see how I make these feathers, here's the video right here, making those feathers. Big ones and small ones. And they're double-sided, guys. Double-sided. And yeah, it's just the way I do it. And I'll show you guys how I did that in that video. It's pretty cool. But yeah, 24 gauge. Because you can still bend it. Look at that, those bends in that right there. I don't know if you guys can see that, but it makes it look kind of realistic. The bends right there. So that's always nice. 24 gauge is very malleable, especially if you anneal it. 22 gauge, guys, I use this a lot for feathers as well. I like to use these also for feathers, a little bit thicker feathers. Ring bands. Sometimes I'll layer 2, or I'll layer 224 for ring bands, something like this. If you watch this video, I show how I make this ring band, and it's actually with 2 pieces of 24, but when you put them together, it pretty much makes it 18 gauge, because 18 gauge is roughly 1 millimeter in thickness. 22 I use a lot for bracelets. I use, actually on this bracelet is 22 gauge. Pretty strong. There's some reinforcements here with this copper on the edges here. But I used 22 on this one because I wanted to make sure that I was able to curl these under all the way. I felt if it was 20 gauge, it might not curl as easy. Here's an example of 3 24 gauges all together. 24 gauge on the back, it's silver. And then 24 gauge copper and jeweler's brass in the middle. And then 24 gauge as these kind of windows. It's another layer. So this is 3 layers of 24 gauge, which is thicker than 18 gauge. So I'm guessing maybe 16 gauge, maybe. When you're layering, I'd suggest thinner sheet to layer. And yeah, so a lot of people out here are using sheet because we don't know how to roll our own silver yet, or we don't have a mill. And here's 20 gauge, guys. I use this a lot for bracelets. I really like this, especially if I'm going to, it's pretty strong, but you even reinforce it more. If you see on this one, I put copper kind of rails. I call them rails, but they're, I guess, borders, copper borders. And that really makes the whole thing so strong. And all this was done on a curve. If you want to see how I make bracelets like this, you can watch this video. This video has chapters in it, so you can get right to the points where it's easier to navigate. But yeah, this is 20 gauge on the bottom and with rails. So this is very, very strong. That's actually really strong. And then 18 gauge, guys. I use these sometimes for rings. Mostly 224s, or I'll use 18 gauge. 18 gauge is 1 millimeter thick. And I use this also for bracelets, especially bigger bracelets. Sometimes men's bracelets. And you can use 18 gauge for these 20 where I use 20 gauge here, you can use 18 gauge here. It really depends on what you're, if you're really looking for to feel heavier and be heavier, you use thicker silver. Some people think it's like rich kid status if it just feels heavy. I know I like the heavy feeling, but sometimes light is nice too. 22 gauge, pretty light. You can wear it. It's just a different feel, and it's really just preference of the client, what they're into and what they like. So 18 gauge is good. It's thick enough. You can even just cut this into a strip and then make your own ring. Make a ring just out of just this thick, because it's thick enough for a ring. Sometimes if you just use a 24 gauge and then try to do a ring with a 24 gauge, it'll bend. You pick up something and it'll just push the metal and will bend the metal. So thicker the better if you don't want your rings to be bending. And you can also work harden them too. Just hit them with the hammer, work harden. Yeah, guys, so that's basically sheet right there, guys. Always have some on hand. And you can see here I put 24, 24, 24, because no matter where I cut it or if I flip it over, and I like to make sure that I know what it is. So at this point I can kind of tell, but sometimes I get confused. So 22 gauge feels a lot like 20 gauge. So mark it so you know what it is, and have at least one of each of these guys on hand, because when you're being creative, the last thing you want to do is be waiting for an order to come in. You know what I'm saying? So if you want to keep it groovy like a drive-in movie, always leaning toward moving forward. Make sure you have plenty of sheet so that you're not stuck waiting for an order or a shipment of silver to come in. Yeah, guys, so heck yeah, buddy boys out there. I hope you guys are making your dreams come true. I am thankful that you guys are with me. I have 830 subscribers, so man, we're moving up like George and Wheezy over here, friends. We out here. We out here, I'm telling you. I have a website now. It's www.boomjewelrydesigns.com. It's basically just a gallery. You can see all the different works that I've done. Some of the stuff that are on this channel are on that website. My Instagram is @boomjewelrydesigns, so you can hit me up on Instagram. I want to see what you're doing. You can come and see what I'm doing. We can follow each other. We can interact probably a little bit easier there. We'll message each other, and especially if we want to do collabs or we just want to kind of just like encourage each other. I think that's important that we stay in contact, stay connected, friends. So yeah, I hope this had value to you. If it did, please subscribe. Thankful for all you people out there that are making your dreams come true and shining on, you crazy diamonds. As you know, I'm Benny. I'm out. Peace. Thank you.